Liberation Day looms in the United States, the Trump tariffs. What do you expect in terms of the detail and the reaction?
I think we'll be relatively lightly treated compared to most other nations. That's very good for the Albanese government because it won't have to overreact. We're getting just a multitude, a blizzard of actions from the Trump White House, as part of Trump's political modus operandi to flood the zone. There's a real danger emerging in Australia, though. If Trump becomes so unpopular in Australia that it becomes politically advantageous to be against Trump, as it is in Canada and in France and in a number of other democratic nations, then that could endanger the alliance. And we are utterly defenceless without the Americans. And even though Trump has, weakened the US commitment to alliances, you're still better to have the US as your ally than not. We still get all the intelligence sharing from them, from their satellites and everything else. And any potential aggressor doesn't know for sure that they wouldn't intervene on our behalf. So it's terribly important that as a nation we focus on the key things, our key national interests, which are preserving the alliance and keeping America involved in the Indo-Pacific. And I think the tariffs do threaten to disturb the whole global economy, but they also threaten to make him so unpopular in Australia that, political forces like the Albanese government start to find that maybe criticising him, having a blue with him is not the worst thing in the world. They're not there yet, but I think we're tending in that direction.
Yeah, well, those that have politically internationally have benefited from that, including Mark Carney in Canada, but elsewhere as well. The politics of that seem to play well for those who end up copping flack from Mr. Trump.
Yeah, Trump has done something astonishing. He's turned left-of-centre politicians into nationalists, into patriotic nationalists. So in Canada, the Conservatives were leading Trudeau's Liberals by 24% just a couple of months ago, 24%. And then Trump attacked Canada with these tariffs. And the Liberals, who had once defined Canada as a post-nationalist nation, all of a sudden became the tribunes of Canadian nationalism, and support has surged back for them. Meanwhile, Trump doesn't like the Canadian Conservatives because they don't sort of pay obeisance to him. Similarly, in France, Emmanuel Macron, who is really a clapped-out lame duck now at this stage of his term, got a tremendous boost in the polling because he was seen to be anti-Trump. Now, just 6 weeks ago, Trump seemed to represent the vibe, and that was going to help, strongmen leaders like Peter Dutton. Certainly Dutton is no Trump, but it was going to help tough conservative leaders like Dutton. Now the reverse is the case, and being associated with Trump in any way is damaging, so that Albanese is attempting to tag Dutton every day with Trump-like policies, cutting public servants and imposing ideology on funding for public schools. So Albanese is walking a tightrope. Yeah. He doesn't want to use Trump's name in case he provokes a reaction from Trump, but he wants to associate Dutton with Trump. So Trump is sort of, at the moment, he's helping centre-left politicians around the world. Now, of course, Trump changes every 3 minutes, so that effect could be reversed. But for the current electoral cycle in Canada and Australia, Trump is hurting the Conservatives.
Finally, before you go, the tempo of the presence of Chinese vessels not far off our shores continues?
Yes, I think this is very disturbing for Australia. These military vessels are interrupting trans-Tasman flights. They're circumnavigating Australia. They are seeing what is the best place for their submarines to sail if they want to come and attack Australia. They're looking at our submarine cables, which they can cut in the event of hostilities. The government has been all at sea, to coin a phrase, in its response to this. Albanese keeps saying we do the same thing. Well, it's very bizarre for an Australian Prime Minister to talk about Australian intelligence sharing, gathering operations near the Chinese coast. But also our Navy that we send to China has no threatening capability at all, whereas the Chinese Navy is full of threat. It shows up again how lame our own military forces are. And Albanese is just determined not to call out China. He doesn't want to get a reaction from Trump. He doesn't want to get a reaction from China. But I don't think you can govern Australia from the fetal position. And this brazenness of the Chinese naval behaviour in our waters shows just what a feeble position we're in. We find it very difficult to shadow these vessels. We certainly couldn't challenge them militarily, not with our sort of ancient antique Anzac frigates and so forth. So this is quite a disturbing moment for Australia. And the Chinese are doing this not only for military purposes, but also intentionally to humiliate us and to show us who is boss. And at the moment, our government is just rolling over and saying, for goodness sake, please don't be mean to us.
Greg Sheridan, we will talk to you next week. Thanks as always.
Thanks, Kieran.